What was the funkiest house or apartment you lived in at some point, and what were some of its strangest or most memorable features? My old college party house had a furnace that would fill up with gas due to a slow leak near the pilot. It'd go boom about once a day, but every time we called over the maintenance man, we could never reproduce it. The house was rightfully condemned a few years after I graduated. Spray soapy water at the area you think is leaking. For anyone who thinks they have leaky gas pipes. I lived in a house for a couple years where the layout was really weird, but the strangest part was that one of the bedrooms had a closet in it. The funky part about the closet is when you pushed on the side wall inside the closet, a small staircase became exposed leading to an attic. I didn't realize the attic existed until about 8 months of me living in the house. The attic was full of stuff from every decade since it was built, sometime in the 1940s. Mostly clothes, but also old sewing machines, cans of food, records, a couple of old chairs. Nothing too out of the ordinary except a really strange painting with a frame that I think was supposed to light up for some reason. I pulled the painting out of the attic and set it in the kitchen. I quickly forgot about it, but over the course of the next week, me and my 2 roommates began having really vivid, really violent dreams, to the point that we finally said something to each other about the weird dreams we were having. I guess we tried to brush it off, but it never really got better. We began not being able to fall asleep, hearing strange noises, and seeing shadows out of the corner of our eyes. This lasted for at least a month before one of my other roommates found the painting and put it back in the attic. Everything kind of went back to normal after that. Looking back, the longer that painting was out, the weirder things got. At first the painting didn't seem super strange, but after it was in the kitchen for a month it definitely took on a sinister feel. That house was super weird in the way it was built. Sorry for the tangent on our strange experience. You're just a draft or 2 away from a one-or-lep story. My house. It's my mom's. I'm 17. Has a giant ice cream sundae sculpture, a drum kit that says scoundrels across it, a phone shaped like a high-heeled shoe from Spencer's, a collection of gumball machines, and a punch fountain, all in the living room. I know that sounds like a hot mess, but it kind of works. The whole house is filled with similar items. My great-grandmother had a 3-story and a basement house with dumbwaiters and legit hidden passages. We had a blast as kids there. She unfortunately died before I got old enough to wonder why. Depends on the area, or the people. I usually think old servants' passages, or someone just liked secret passages. But someone mentioned Anne Frank's house earlier and I realized people built a lot of crap like that to hide people from the Holocaust. I haven't heard of it much in the US, but I assume at least some probably did the same for former slaves. The first house my husband and I bought. Still live here. There is a door in the back of the pantry that leads into the master bath. Perfect for shower snacks. A studio in Seattle. The bathroom door only opened 1/3rd of the way before it hit the toilet, so you had to squeeze between the door and the sink to get in or out. The bathroom light switch was behind an uncovered hot water pipe, so if you went to turn the lights on and weren't thinking, you could get an unpleasant surprise. This pipe also made absurdly loud noises when they're heated up, similar to if someone had been in your apartment and was hitting them with a hammer. The kitchen was too narrow, so the fridge also only opened less than halfway, which meant that the drawers inside the fridge would hit the fridge door after opening about 5 inches, making them all useless. Since the kitchen was so narrow, you could easily turn the gas on the stove with your butt while washing dishes and had to be careful of that. And my neighbor clearly didn't have a job or any reasonable taste in music. One Sunday night I heard the Katy Perry song Firework on repeat loudly until probably 3-4 am. I like Firework. It is a good pick-me-up song. However, any song is annoying on repeat. While in college, my husband and I rented the basement of a 1940s Sears type home. Our landlords were an eccentric retired couple who were really good to us. Their daughter lived upstairs and she was awesome too. The first room you saw when you entered the front door was the bathroom. It was built on 3 large steps with the vanity on one step, the shower on the next step and the toilet on the highest step. The shower tiles were yellow and some featured an outlet eye level to one's junk in the shower. Each room had its own different 70s style carpet. Entry was brown and orange. Hall was grey. Bedroom was turquoise. The walk-in closet was orange. Dining area was a blue speckled office carpet. Royal blue carpet on another step up into a lounge. Then the lounge featured carpet with multicolored nature-colored stripes. The dining area had whiteboard material on the walls from floor to ceiling which we would draw on. Our bedroom had a boat steering wheel light fixture. I lived in an apartment with a bathroom that had the toilet so close to the wall that you could lean forward and rest your forehead against the wall in front of you whilst pooping. Miss that place. My best friend has a bathroom with a wall close to the toilet. Very handy when tired or drunk. When my mom was buying our last house she looked at one with shag carpets on all 4 floors and a fireman's pole from top to bottom. Dude, that sounds awesome. I was young, moving away from home for the first time for school and looking for the cheapest place I could live by myself in a city I knew nothing about. I ended up getting a 1BR, 2-floor apartment. Pretty sweet, right? Wrong. The day I moved in I found a full large size freezer baggie of weed in the closet. It looked like a pillow, it was stuffed so full. I freaked out and dumped it down the toilet. That night the girl next door had very loud sex with 3 different men at 2 different times. The next day the landlord came in because he'd forgotten something during the walkthrough and needed it today. So, yeah, I broke lease a couple weeks later and moved in with 6 other people. 12 years later and one of them is still my boyfriend. My neighbor was really nice, though. I kept forgetting my keys in my door and she kept knocking and giving them back to me. My apartment I'm in now was built around 1918 and doesn't have a bedroom door. In some areas the paint is peeling off so you can see the pastel pink and avocado green colors that have to be from the 70s and 80s, and the bathtub is tiled in linoleum. It also has a doorway that leads into a closed off section of the hallway, and the building itself has old icebox doors mounted on the walls that kind of confuse visitors. I rented a shack, which turned out to be laden with poisonous spiders. Brown recluses everywhere. In the laundry, in the bathroom, in the basement, all over the place. Luckily, no bites. It was a cheap rental, $75 more with interesting terms. One of the terms of the rental was to feed all the animals, a lizard, a bunch of fish, and the snapping turtle behind the couch, in a tank. Super cool neighbor had his basement with a huge circular pool and a shark circling in it among many other critters. Don't worry, the next summer I moved states and upgraded to an apartment with slightly less poisonous spiders. Summer 1, brown recluses. Summer 2, yellow sac spiders. Both were verified by insect scientists. College house was broken up into 3 apartments at one point and then reverted back into one rental. There was a kitchen bathroom combo downstairs. The sink and cabinets were definitely kitchen style with a shower right next to it, all open to the 2 bedrooms that were down there. On the 2nd floor there was an oven and a hall closet. Other odd things was that the laundry room was added on but did not have ducts or any heat source installed. So in the winter we had to detach the dryer vent hose to thaw out the washer to do laundry. Our maintenance guy recommended this. Last there were steps outside that led to a blocked off room in the basement that we figured the landlord forgot to lock. Full of old kids games and junk. We put some furniture and a TV in it and it was our VIP section during parties. Was a pretty crazy place. Fun but rough at times. Had mice in it too. In 1947, as vets were coming home from World War II, mustering out, getting married, and going to back to school on the GI Bill, the government had a problem. Too much on base housing, and not enough on campus housing. So, acres of surplus barracks were moved from the nearby base to the north end of campus, converted to 6 plexes, 4 units downstairs, 2 units up, and labeled temporary married students housing. In 1974, they were still there, walls of cardboard, single pane windows, 1/4 of the living room taken up with a humongous freestanding oil heater. It was a benefit to make friends with the couple above you, so that in the winter you could go upstairs and enjoy your heat, which was mostly in their apartment. But hey, it was $50 a month including all utilities. If you start at the bottom, you have no place to go but up, right? I stayed in a really old building in the Isle of Wight for a while. Every flat was a freaking gold mine of this sort of thing. The place I was staying was 1 room and the bathroom was in the room. I mean, there was literally a tiled segment of the floor surrounded by carpet on which there was a toilet and a bathtub. No sink or anything. No flats had their own kitchen. You were expected to share one of the 2 kitchens with other residents. There was also flats with no bathroom at all. There were several communal bathrooms. Flats with an old, rotten bathroom that looked like they hadn't been cleaned in a century. Flats with collapsing walls which literally let you see into another flat's bathroom. Flats with no ventilation at all. A flat that just seemed like a closet with a bed in it. A flat where you couldn't even stand up. Only one flat had central heating. An awful lot of black mold. That place was special. I don't think it's still around. The UK specializes in terrible crumbling housing. Not so much the apartment itself, but one time I met a woman by chance who rented my exact same unit in 1959. She started telling me about bus routes she took to work, and we ended up figuring out that she lived in my unit way back when. For one semester while in college, I lived in a small efficiency apartment above a little old lady's carport. The floor was in such bad shape, I had to jump through the doorway to avoid my foot going through the floor. The kitchen consisted of a single basin sink and an old hot plate. The shower must have been designed by one of the 7 dwarfs as the shower head was lined up with my abdomen. There were only 3 electrical outlets, and one of them was a long extension cord that was plugged into the old lady's house downstairs and ran up through the kitchen window. When the wind would blow, and it always blew late at night, the whole apartment would shake and rattle. Rented a room in an older house. One wall was painted purple, another was painted teal. When it rained in the fall and winter, the basement wouldn't flood, but a seasonal creek would run through. Someone had marked the outline of the creek on the floor so we were aware. A previous tenant had decided to build a treehouse, and that treehouse had nicer windows than my room. And the basement had so many random items left behind from other prior residents that we swore anytime any of us needed something, we could just manifest it from the basement. It worked for me. I needed a new sleeping bag, and the basement provided me with probably the nicest sleeping bag I've ever had. It was one of the quirkiest houses I'd ever lived in, and I have very fond memories of it and my housemates. My parents' house growing up had a deck on springs that we called the bouncy deck and could jump on. It also had a freezer in the floor as well as a random hole in the floor that we stuffed with pillows and deemed the pillow pit. I was too embarrassed to realize how awesome my childhood was. My current place is odd. It's a 900 SQFT craftsman house that has 2 staircases to the basement, one a normal landing style, and the second the narrowest spiral staircase I have ever seen. A stained glass window, inside, from a bedroom to the main living room, that you can somehow see through pretty clearly. My room upstairs has not 1 but 2 doors to it. The kitchen is Christmas themed, green and red. One whole side of the house has only 1 single window. Mirrors cover 70% of the first floor, and I'm not talking hung. The mirrors literally go floor to ceiling, wall to wall, my favorite one being directly in front of the toilet. There are also weird cubbies that extend from the back of closets that extend the whole length of the house. It also has a fully functioning bidet, not at all common here in the US. The thing is, it looks normal from the street but it's not at all. Me and the roommates refer to it as the funhouse. I lived in an artist residency hotel. The rooms were designated by letters that had a random order. We had a community kitchen and all helped run the hotel and trade for cheap rent. There was 2 painters, a screenwriter, a playwright, a glass blower and a musician. The area was kind of rough but it was gated and generally we were left alone. One time we had prostitutes stay in a room and it was trashed with needles and other nastiness. I had a blast living there and I miss it sometimes. When I was a student I had a ground floor room in a shared house. A few months and I start hearing rats in the kitchen, next to my room, at night. And then one night as I went to the bathroom I saw one. A few weeks later I woke up in the morning, went made myself coffee, came back to my room and sat by my desk before realizing there was a dead rat right in the middle of my room. We also had snails come in at night. I never managed to see one, which was the weirdest thing. But in the mornings, the floor in my room as well in the living room had dried shiny silver trails where they'd been. On top of this, that winter our plumbing got backed up and the backyard slowly flooded with the stinkiest black goo. Our landlord refused to acknowledge any of these issues. The fuse box was in the shower. Like the head of the shower was like 7 feet off the ground, and directly below it at 4 feet was the fuse box. Every shower was absolutely terrifying. Rented an apartment. The building started out as a multi-floor slaughterhouse. It was converted to multiple apartments. First thing, the bathroom had a toilet sink combo like you see in prisons. The living room, bedroom, kitchen had a Murphy bed that folded out of the wall. The worst part was the smell in the summer. From the years the building was a slaughterhouse, the smell permeated the brick of the building. However, a plus, I paid $75 a month and that included utilities. I only realized how cool my childhood house was after moving away and growing up. It was a pretty modest house, but had some cool features. It was designed to be kept warm through New Hampshire winters with only a wood stove and large windows on the whole back of the house. They probably faced southeast or something so that the sun would keep the house warm most of the day. Then you light a fire at night. The fireplace was in the finished basement, so the chimney ran through all 3 floors, giving off some warmth. It's also probably the reason for asthma. I shared my room with my brother, but I had this really cool loft area all to myself. It was basically just big enough to hold a twin mattress and a shelf area for some of my stuff. It also had a little tunnel that ran through to the other bedrooms. I remember just tons of wood too. Wood paneled walls, crazy floors made from like 10 featuring solid planks of wood and old-fashioned nails holding them in place. 500-year-old hacienda. Second mining hacienda in Latam, in the mountains in Guerrero, 5 hours from Acapulco, in a 200-acre property. Main building was haunted. Second building too, hahaha, you could actually see the ghost of the first owner's wife jump off the balcony in the middle of the night. Thank God I never lived in that room. Had a basement under the old tavern's floor where they kept the slaves back in the colonial days. Pretty spooky at night. Was a Franciscan monastery in the 1700s, a fancy hotel in the 1920 to 1960s, and then it was abandoned for about 30 years until a friend's family acquired it, mafia style. Lived there for 1.5 years. It was surreal. Loved every second. My family rented a house in which the second story was obviously an addition. However, the downstairs didn't make much sense either. There was a room in the middle with a door on each side that was covered in bright red shiny Chinese wallpaper with dragons, etc. This was as well as a dining room next to the kitchen, which left very little use for this room. We just left it empty. Upstairs there were 3 bedrooms and one of these was only big enough for a single bed and had no windows. It did however have a door that led into the roof where there were quite often possums. More conspicuous were the high-powered lights that had obviously been used to grow weed up there. The roof area allowed you to walk or crawl around the whole house, and there were peepholes looking into every room. I lived with my family, so no temptation there. What gets even weirder is that roughly a decade later I was talking about this house with my girlfriend at the time, who later became my fiance. It turns out that her family had moved out of that house right before we moved in. We also discovered that I had lived across the street from her grandfather when I was 10 years old in a small town hours from where we lived, and that we had played together as kids. Would have made a great story if we'd actually gotten married. My GF and I are currently living in a remodeled Coca-Cola bottling plant. The windows are so big we couldn't find curtains to fit them, and there's very little insulation in the ceiling on them. They told us the tiling on the kitchen floors is from the original plant, and there's a giant steel beam that spans our living room. It's pretty cozy. The first house I remember living in 100+ years old, and sometimes we had bees in the walls and grasshoppers in the cup cupboards. When I first moved out at 21, I rented a house with 2 friends of a friend. The house itself was on a commercial lot and sat between a Pizza Hut and a dentist's office. Directly across the street was a 24-hour speedway in the corner of a major intersection. It was the greatest stoner rental possible. Unfortunately it's gone now. There were 3 things interesting about it other than the location. The first was the previous renters were drug-addled, and they painted all these hippie drug symbols on the ceiling of the attic. Mushrooms, rainbows, joints, a happy sun, flower meadow peace sign, etc. But there was also some cultist-like sayings up there that were unsettling. The second odd part was, despite it was a 3-bedroom, my bedroom was tiny. 12 featuring long x 6 featuring wide, but it did have a 3x6 closet. Oddly, it also had a door that led out to the roof. Not a balcony, just to the roof. There was a flat area just deep enough that we could put 3 lawn chairs up there, which was chill. The third part was the owner had used up the backyard to make a 3-stroke 4th size basketball court. The owner also installed a public water fountain outside. Unfortunately, half the court was encroached 4 feet deep upon by the garage. However, the owner had 4 murals painted on that shed. Approx 5 feet tall were Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant and LeBron James. Also a huge basketball at the top. The artist had left 2 spaces for other players. You can see it on Google Earth. Releston Circle, Toledo, Ohio. Second building from the left on the north side of the road. My buddy lived in a house of like 10 people he had never met before. And there was one guy that we will call Glitch. Glitch was a neckbeard type that had been kicked out of the army for weed and spice. He lived in a room at the end of the hall that was basically a long closet. I'm talking 5'12", really narrow. He slept on a cot and had a 10-inch TV at one end. It was a cave of disaster and weird smells. One time, I went in there and saw a pizza box with holes stabbed in the top, most likely with the combat knife he always carried. I asked him about it and he said he had opened the box a while back and saw that the old pizza had started growing mushrooms that looked like they could be magic mushrooms. So he wanted to give them room to grow in order for him to test them when they got big enough. I lived in a small city in northern Saskatchewan. The house I rented a room in was actually the beginning of the city itself. There was a picture in the museum of the house on a 40-acre lot with nothing in all directions. It was spacious and had an awesome attic that was not as musty or stuffed as you would expect. The only problem was that it was owned by 2 brothers who didn't give a crap. Last time I was there, the place had degraded to the point where they were considering having it condemned because of water damage and mold. Quite sad really. It was 2 stories and had an awesome deck. If someone had the money to fix it all up, it would have made an amazing home. Neighbors who smoked, despite posted no smoking signs. A DJ downstairs with loud parties. Leaks whenever it rained. A landlord who didn't give a frick about any of it. And worst of all, no recycling service. My current place has 0 recycling. My parents yell at me when I go home for not recycling, but honestly I'm just forgetting how to. When my husband and I first got married, we lived in an apartment that had been converted from extra office space for an animal technology company. They made instruction type videos for vets. From what we could gather, it was similar to a cartoon defensive driving type video. There were several quirks. The washer and dryer were upstairs in the women's bathroom of the office space. My husband had several encounters with this issue. Thankfully he always announced himself before entering, and we tried to only use the washer and dryer outside of office hours. We were downstairs from the company basketball gym, where they played during their lunch breaks at least twice a week. They were all super friendly and often invited us to join. It was clearly an office space in that the walls were never properly insulated to account for someone actually living in the apartments. We could often hear the employees working on set videos or having meeting conversations directly on the other side of what was our bedroom wall. Mostly just comical, except at 8 AM in the morning when my husband worked nights, and after falling asleep at 5 AM we were jolted awake by corny intro theme music on how to clean vet facilities. I made a few complaints about this. However, I'm sure that as annoying as it was to us to hear their videos, our newlywed daytime sex was probably much more awkward for them. All in all, a good cheap first apartment and lots of memories. I lived in this crazy apartment in Germany that had a floor plan that made 0 sense. There were like 1,000 rooms and they were all interconnected with no main hallway. You'd have to go through rooms to get to other ones. Most rooms had 2 doors, sometimes leading to the same place. The carpet was puke orange and the most uncomfortable carpet ever. Super hard and scratchy. Couldn't walk around without shoes without hurting my feet. There was one functional kitchen and one non-functional one. It had all the hookups but no appliances. Same for bathrooms, one functional one and one with just a sad, non-working toilet. So weird. It was also on the top floor and had attic access via a staircase that was hidden behind what looked like a closet door. I found the staircase one day while looking for storage and it scared the living crap out of me. Why? Because that thing is straight from a goddamn horror movie. I went into the attic once, and only because my sister made me, and it was terrifying. There was nothing up there but hundreds of years worth of cobwebs, a clawfoot tub that I'm sure was supposed to go in the non-functional bathroom at some point, and a malicious ghost, I swear to God. Always kept that door locked, but occasionally I'd come home from work and it would be wide open, and it was directly in front of the front door. Scared the crap out of me at least once a month. Definitely avoided walking past it when it was not daylight. At the time I loved living there, but now that I look back on it, it was hands down the weirdest place I ever lived, and I would not live there again if you paid me. My husband and I rented a house with a couple of roommates. This house had a mystery flush. Every once in a while, at random, we would hear a sound like water running through pipes like you hear after a toilet had been flushed. But neither of us had used our bathroom when we heard that, and our roommates were either gone or in their bedrooms. Later, about 3 months ago, when we got a new place, we noticed that our water bill was about half of what we paid at the mystery flush house. One house I lived in as a kid was really weird. Super small, but the back bedroom was thin and super long, so long that my brother only really used half of it and the other half was used for storage. The only bathroom was accessible only through my bedroom. Yes, it was a bedroom. There was a regular sized closet and it was across the hall from the other bedroom. The first house I lived in with my now husband was really wonky. I think they had converted the garage into a really weird, again very long bedroom, with a random door to the front at one end. The shower had a waist-high wall and 2 short steps to get in, so you had to literally try to climb over this slippery tile to get in or out. The second bathroom was divided into a separate toilet room in the far corner of the kitchen, and another room that was basically just a huge shower at the near corner. There was this weird little closet that held a shallow tub that sat at, again, about waist high. A third toilet was found in a weird bonus mudroom laundry room, but it didn't work. That house was like someone just built extra stuff as they needed it. Oh man, I need to crap but someone is in the other bathroom. Here, I'll just stick a toilet in the pantry. Oh done, now I need to take a shower but someone else is crapping in that room. Let's just stick one over here. There's water coming out of the first shower. Needs a wall. My first act was a 3-bedroom that was cheaper than renting a room because it was haunted and the kitchen cabinets would open and close by themselves. Every pet I had would run away or die. I lived in an early 1900s home just after college with 3-4 other kids my age. It had 12-foot ceilings, a wraparound porch, and the tall windows made for cross breezes. A stained glass door too. None of us had keys so we never locked the doors. The bathroom window was busted out and there was a hole in the living room floor from the jump dance craze that plagued the late zeros. We did not deserve that place. Thermostat had been ripped out of the wall, so there was just 2 wires sticking out. If you wanted the heater on, you cross the wires. Too hot? Uncross them. This led to many comical arguments between me and my roommates about whether or not to cross the wires. Oh man, I wish I weren't so late to this thread. I literally just moved in this week. We live in the basement of an old, mostly remodeled church. You can tell it was the parish. The bedrooms are vaguely office-like, but very nicely sized, and some of them have their own exits to the lobby area. We also have a full-size bar built into the living room, which is pretty frickin' awesome. The whole place is 3,000 square featuring. The really cool part is the ground floor. 7-bedroom apartment. We're trying to befriend them so we can party with them. Massively high ceiling, with a balcony stretching across 3 of the walls. Probably 4 of the bedrooms are up there. There's also a pool table up there. Some of the railings from the pews are still there, and considering they have 20+ couches, the railings serve to divide up the massive living room into different sections. The best part, the baptismal bath, complete with stairs leading down into it, has been turned into a slightly sunken bar. It's easily the best party house in the neighborhood. I lived in an old farmhouse in a very small town. Rent was only $500 a month and this included utilities and trash. So as a single mother, I moved in right away. Everyone called it the old boys home. It was used as a home for young males with behavioral issues. It was closed down after an investigation of alleged molestation 53 years prior to me moving in though. This house was right out of a horror film. It had 3 large fireplaces, all of which had been boarded up and painted over. It also had an entire working kitchen that had just been blocked off by drywall. The creepiest part was the basement. I was told I could use it for storage. I never went down there after my first time exploring it though. There was this heavy stained glass door that you would walk in. It led into a very narrow hallway. Both walls made of just concrete with nothing to light your way. It opened up into a giant concrete room of shower heads. No stalls and one large drain in the middle. A large pond sat in the back of the house and it still had the old dock and these canoes that were just sitting in overgrown brush near the water. I had some weird experiences in this house. Jesus. My ex-girlfriend and I had this tiny apartment across the street from campus and the dorms. I'm 5'4" and my knees would hit the bathtub when I was sitting on the toilet. Paper thin walls, and from what I'd heard from a friend previous tenant, a landlord who had a particular liking for looking through underwear drawers. But it was cheap and we were broke, so we dealt with it until we could afford something else. I'm not sure how funky that makes it, but it was definitely one of the more strange times of my life. I lived abroad in Brazil for a little over a year. One house had the washer up in a patio roof, but to get to it you had to climb tiny stair-like ladder made of only rebar. I was terrified every time I needed to take laundry up or down. We lived in a converted hotel. Full kitchen, full bath, and the closet was big enough that the studio apartment was really a one bedroom. I freaking loved that place. I moved in with friends after college. Their apartment was a house that had been subdivided into 5 rentable units. Ours was on the top floor. It was obviously a converted attic with a new addition. So half the apartment was a newish unit, and the other half was attic with low ceilings and exposed beams. For what it was okay. It had a full bathroom, dishwasher, and came with a free leather couch. Also, it was super cheap and everything nearby was walkable, and it was in the heart of the University District in Seattle, which was worth how crappy the unit was. My room was really just a closet. Tallest point in the room was about 4 feet. The ceiling was plywood and you could see where roofing nails missed the beams and came through. Also, that meant there wasn't any insulation. If I stood in my room and looked at where the wall met the ceiling, there were gaps and I could see outside. The worst part was that, in Seattle that year, we had an extremely hot summer. Peak temp was 105 F. And in the winter we had snow stay around for 3 weeks. We got a thermometer to see just how hot it got. The day it was 105, our apartment was 117. During the winter it stayed around 20 degrees for 3 weeks, and our apartment got as cold as 44 degrees Fahrenheit. We survived off space heaters and would watch TV in sleeping bags. The unit, since it was an old house, still only had one centralized furnace, of which the cultural said furnace were not in our unit, so it would come on, but didn't do anything to help with the heat. The silver lining to this apartment, aside from costing me around $250 to rent my room, was that the entire back half, the attic portion, of the apartment was wired to the unit below meter. So we just ran all our space heaters with extension cords from the back half of our apartment. Our electric bill was never over $18 and we were billed every other month. From what I have found out, the building has since been demolished and someone sued the rental agency for some other shady nonsense they were up to. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.